There's a reason why you keep giving your heart to someone who can't give you anything in return. And that reason has nothing to do with them. It's not about who they are or what they do. It's about you, about something deeper, a wound you haven't dared to face yet. Because when love starts to feel like a battle, when you exhaust yourself trying to prove your worth to someone who doesn't see it, what's speaking in those moments isn't your heart, it's your wound. And that wound has a name, the wound of not feeling enough. This is one of the most invisible emotional wounds, and at the same time, one of the most destructive because it doesn't scream or show itself, but it shapes everything, every decision you make, every connection you form, and the way you give and receive love. Most women who love from this space do it because deep down, they are still trying to prove they are worthy of love. That's the root of it all. Because if you believe you have to earn love, you're already starting from a place of lack. Carl Jung said, "What you do not make conscious will manifest as fate." That's exactly what happens when your wound is the one making the choices for you. That wound keeps choosing the same pattern again and again. Someone emotionally unavailable. Someone who can't truly offer you anything real, but who awakens in you the illusion that if they love you, then finally you'll have proven that you're enough. But that's the trap. You're trying to heal your self-worth through someone else, and that someone by definition is unavailable for love. And that's not a coincidence. It's a mirror of what you're still not giving yourself. This pattern didn't begin with them. It began with your story, with that stage in your life when you first felt that your worth depended on how hard you tried, when you learned you had to be more perfect or more pleasing just to be loved. That programming rooted itself deep in your unconscious. And now you're repeating the same story, hoping that this time it will be different. But it doesn't work that way. As long as your wound is in the driver's seat, all you will feel is frustration and the constant belief that you're not enough. You give everything. You wait, you hope, and when you don't receive the same in return, you blame yourself. What you don't realize is that this dynamic isn't love. It's a defense mechanism. It's the way your psyche is trying to fix something that was left unresolved years ago. But here's the hard truth. No one is going to come and give you the love you keep denying yourself. No one can fill the space where you have abandoned yourself. And yes, that truth hurts, but it's also the key to your freedom. Because the day you finally understand this, you stop begging for love. You stop justifying someone's absence. You stop chasing after someone who doesn't see you. You begin to realize you don't need to convince anyone that you're worthy. And if someone can't see your worth, that's not your place. Carl Jung spoke of individuation as the process of internal integration that begins the moment you have the courage to look at your wound without filters. When you finally see that your desperation to be loved comes from a part of you that was ignored long before this relationship, you begin to take responsibility for your healing. She needs your presence, your validation, your love, and no one else can give that to her. And if you don't take it, you'll keep falling into the same relationships again and again, with different names and faces, but always the same. Pattern. Why do you keep loving from a place of lack? Why do you feel drawn to people who offer you nothing? There is a quiet kind of pain that becomes a pattern when it's left unhealed. It's a pain that leads you to look in the wrong direction, a pain that convinces you love lives in the place where it hurts the most, a pain that tells you that if someone doesn't choose you, you must be the problem. And that's how the cycle begins, a story that repeats without your awareness, where you are constantly drawn to emotionally unavailable people. It's not random. It's your wound speaking, choosing, and repeating what feels familiar. Because when you grow up in an environment where love was scarce, something inside you begins to associate love with sacrifice, with pain, with waiting, and without realizing it, that becomes your emotional compass. Your unconscious starts seeking out that same energy in your relationships. The final sign is the most revealing of all. Your heart keeps attracting what resembles your past, not to punish you, but to heal what remains unresolved. Carl Jung explained it with striking precision. The unconscious is always striving to complete itself, and one of the ways it tries to do so is through symbolic repetition. Without even realizing it, you search for someone who can make you feel the same way you felt with that figure who once hurt you. But this time you do it with the unconscious hope that things will be different. And that's exactly where the greatest self-deception begins. You find yourself drawn to someone emotionally unavailable, and instead of walking away, something deep inside you latches on even harder. A voice old and hidden whispers, "If this time I can get them to choose me, then I'm worthy. If I can win the love of someone who resembles the one who once hurt me, then I'll finally feel whole." But that love never comes, and you stay, you wait, you endure, you justify. You're just reliving an old wound, born from lack, from absence, from a time when you had to settle for crumbs and call it love. And because your wound grew in the soil of scarcity, you now feel strangely comfortable in spaces where nothing is given, where there's no reciprocity. But your mind turns these small fragments into castles, and your imagination fills in the rest. The cruelest part is when someone finally comes along who sees you, who treats you well, who doesn't require you to earn their love. You recoil. You feel bored. You feel it's too good to be true. You push them away. Why? Because your wound doesn't recognize healthy love. For you, loving has always meant struggle and anxiety. When there's no drama, your system panics. That isn't love, that's emotional trauma disguised as love. Your body has learned to live on high alert, to anticipate disappointment, to fear abandonment. So paradoxically, you feel more alive in relationships that hurt because pain has become your comfort zone. The pattern becomes addictive because every time someone rejects you, it activates that ancient wound. That little girl inside you who was never enough to be embraced is still there, waiting, hoping that someone someday will finally say, "I choose you. I love you. I see you." But you keep searching for that recognition in all the wrong places, in people who don't have the capacity to give you what you deserve. And so the cycle repeats. Love becomes a war you always lose because the price of that war is your self-worth, your energy, and your peace. That's when consciousness must enter the scene, because as long as your wound remains hidden in the shadows, it will continue choosing your relationships and disguising emotional dependence as love. Here's the trap of emotional self-deception: justifying the unjustifiable out of fear of abandonment. Most people don't stay in toxic relationships because they can't leave. They stay because they built a story to justify the unjustifiable. This is one of the most subtle defense mechanisms of the unconscious. It protects you from having to face the pain head-on. When you're with someone who makes you feel invisible, a part of you knows it, but there's another part, the most wounded, that starts to tell another story. They're like this because they've suffered too much. I understand them. Deep down, I know they love me. And all of that feels noble, but it's not. It's fear. It's the fear of accepting that someone you love isn't choosing you. The person will not change. And maybe deep down, you already know it. But the fear is not just about them leaving. What truly paralyzes you is the idea of being left alone with your wounds wide open and your illusions shattered. So you fight to keep that illusion alive. You make excuses. You remember the moments when they were sweet, and you convince yourself that those moments define who they really are. But what you're actually doing is far more dangerous. You're turning your pain into justification. You're using your empathy as armor to protect yourself from the truth. Because if you looked clearly, if you admitted to yourself that they don't love you the way you love them, you'd have to do the unthinkable. You'd have to walk away. You'd have to let go. And that touches the deepest wound, the one that whispers, "You're not enough." So you choose the path that feels safest to your nervous system, denial and self-deception. And the thing about self-deception is that it works for a while. It gives you temporary relief. It numbs the ache. Until one day your body begins to speak louder than your thoughts. The anxiety becomes constant. You start to look in the mirror and not recognize the person staring back at you. And then it hits you. Your entire world is orbiting around someone who doesn't even notice your gravity. That realization shatters your soul, not just because of what the relationship has become, but because you realize you betrayed yourself. You silenced your instincts. You made yourself small to be loved. You mistook endurance for love. You became an expert at forgiving someone who never even apologized, all because you were terrified of being alone. But that fear didn't begin with this relationship. That fear was planted long ago in the earliest chapters of your life, in those moments when you needed love but it wasn't given. And now you're repeating the same story. That unhealed wound is still there, whispering to you that if you're just more patient, maybe then they'll change. But here's the truth, they won't. Not because you're unworthy of love, but because when you love from your wounds, you choose from your need, not from your self-worth. The people you attract aren't there to heal you. They're there to reflect what still needs healing within you. And that's why the pattern repeats. Changing faces, but never changing the wound. Trauma has a quiet way of pulling you back into what's familiar, even if it's destroying you. It makes you believe that something new is dangerous, and that something healthy is boring, because your body only knows how to survive in chaos. And when peace finally comes, your nervous system panics. Your body has become addicted to drama, and as long as you're not aware of it, your wound will continue to recreate the same kind of situations that once hurt you the most with your full consent. You'll be the one justifying it, defending it, holding on to it, not because you want more pain, but because you've confused that pain with love. if you grew up believing that love had to be earned, then when someone offers you genuine, unconditional love, you can't accept it. It doesn't fit your inner map. It terrifies you. So once again, you find yourself drawn to the one who's unavailable. Not because you're foolish, but because your trauma is still in control, and that trauma doesn't calm down just because someone else loves you more. It only starts to heal through awareness. When you find the courage to look back with a different set of eyes, when you finally realize that the little girl who was abandoned is still waiting, still hoping someone will come and say, "I see you. You are enough," you begin to break the cycle. But no one can give her that love. As long as you're searching outside for a healing that can only come from within, you'll keep falling into the same emotional trap. Because relationships don't heal wounds, they reveal them. They expose what you haven't yet integrated. Repetition isn't your punishment, it's your mirror. And when you finally learn to look at that reflection without judgment, the cycle begins to break. Not suddenly, but it does begin to break. It starts when you stop chasing what keeps hurting you, when you choose to stop defending the indefensible, when you set boundaries not out of pride, but from deep self-love, when you decide to walk away not because you've stopped feeling, but because you refuse to keep bleeding for someone who doesn't know how to hold your heart. That's the beginning of true awakening. A woman who has faced her wounds with compassion no longer stays where love isn't mutual. She no longer accepts emotional crumbs. She no longer convinces herself that almost love is enough. A woman who has stood in the mirror of her relationships and made the decision to heal no longer repeats her trauma. She transforms it. She alchemizes it into wisdom. There comes a moment in every woman's life when something inside her shatters. But this time, it's not a fall into darkness. It's a crack that lets in the light. It's a rupture that doesn't destroy her, but opens her soul. And in that moment, there is a part of her that can never fall back asleep. That moment arrives when you can no longer carry the emotional lie that kept you trapped. When you become profoundly tired of chasing what never truly chose you. And even if your heart still feels something, you choose to walk away. Even if it aches, you choose to let go. And that is the real act of awakening. Healing a wound is not some magical event, it's raw. It's sitting with yourself and saying, yes, I was that little girl who didn't feel good enough. Yes, I learned to love from sacrifice. Yes, I betrayed myself again and again just to avoid losing others. But it's also looking at yourself with deep compassion and then adding the one thing that changes everything. No more. Because there comes a point where pain is no longer a valid excuse and instead becomes the fuel to start building the life and love you truly deserve. This is healing. This is healing. It's no longer repeating from the wound. It's beginning to choose from consciousness. Carl Jung spoke of the process of individuation as the sacred journey through which the soul meets itself. It is a path of inner awakening where you begin to stop living for others and stop being shaped by the masks you've learned to play. It's the moment you choose to no longer abandon yourself for the sake of fitting in. Individuation is the courageous act of integrating your shadow, your wounds, and your past. Through understanding, you stop projecting them onto the world. You stop making choices from a place of emptiness, pain, or fear. Suddenly, you no longer seek validation from others. You no longer feel the urge to prove your worth through someone else's love because finally something clicks deep inside. You are enough. And this isn't just a nice quote. It's a truth that becomes etched into your being when you finally decide to do the inner work. When you stop running, stop begging, stop chasing, and instead start walking, step by step, back to yourself. This journey isn't smooth, but now you're different. You see the pattern. You've reached the bottom, and while it felt like the end, it was really the beginning, the dark doorway that led you to your true worth. When a woman finally looks at herself, with radical honesty, she no longer bargains with her dignity. She no longer pours energy into places where there's no reciprocity. She stops begging for love from people who only know how to offer indifference, and that changes everything. You begin to feel peace in your own solitude. You begin to enjoy your own silence, your own body, your own choices. You start to love not from a place of lack or desperation, but from wholeness. You choose from awareness, not from wounds. And when love arrives, it doesn't make you question yourself. Real love does not drain you. It sees you even in your silence. It chooses you not through empty promises, but through meaningful actions. And most importantly, real love never tries to fill your inner void. Instead, it simply walks beside you while you fill it from within. That's what happens when you start choosing differently, because you finally chose yourself first. Healing your wound means you stop chasing love. You start becoming it. Your story doesn't end where you were broken. It truly begins the moment you choose to stop perpetuating the same pain with each decision you make. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means facing it with open eyes and an open heart, and choosing not to abandon yourself anymore just to keep someone else. A woman who chooses healing doesn't become cold. She becomes aware, and that awareness makes her free. Free to stop begging for love. Free to stop carrying what was never hers to hold. Free to finally say, I did not come into this life to beg for what I deserve to receive in fullness. Jung believed that the soul has an instinct toward wholeness, and that wholeness can never be reached by waiting for others to complete you. It comes when you choose to complete yourself from within. Today you are ready. Ready to let go of the patterns, to release the trauma, to shed the version of you that believed she had to be chosen in order to matter. Today marks a new beginning, one that doesn't come from fear but from truth. If you feel this in your heart, write it in the comments. I no longer chase love. I am love, and from that place I choose differently, because this is the woman I'm becoming. If you've made it this far, it's because you're ready to transform your life. But this is only the beginning. Click now, subscribe, and turn on the notifications so you never miss the content that could change the way you see everything. I'll see you in the next video.